Very what looks like cold and snowy Green Bay, Wisconsin. The Packers will be taking on the Seattle Seahawks. I'm cold looking at it. I feel horrible for Stacey Dale. She's been there all morning.
I believe that's what John Facenda referred to as the frozen tundra.
Yeah, not fun. But our first snow game. Here's Dak Prescott getting warmed up and ready
so
as the Cowboys.
To rain.
Ooh, as the Cowboys. I like that. As the Cowboys take on the Atlanta Falcons. Welcome in, everyone, to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. I'm Kimmy Chex. Holding it down with me are my very good friends Marcus Grant and Michael F. Florio. Now, guys, it's week 10. And I know that combined between the three of us, we play in approximately a kajillion fantasy football leagues. But what is the one league that you're holding strong on and you're like, I have to crush my competition in this week and every week?
Oh, man. It's probably the league. It's the league I'm in with like a bunch of guys from high school. Like literally it goes way back a while. And they signed me up the moment I actually started working here. And believe it or not, I've never actually won the league. So like, I gotta figure it out, man. I gotta figure it out.
Florio, what about you?
Mine is very similar. It's a league I've been in since high school. All the original members are still in it. I've won it back then. I haven't won it in like 10 years though, but I am the top scorer so far, so I'm feeling pretty good about my team.
A little humble brag right there.
A little bit.
Isn't it awkward, like especially when you work for the NFL and you cover fantasy football? Everyone's like, aren't you supposed to win every single week?
Great. What's wrong with you?
The league I'm most competitive in this season is our Fantasy Live League, because it's all of us playing together and it's fun. You and I actually face each other today.
Oh, do we?
We're going head to head. I'm in the number one spot on the league.
I started hot in that league, and then I've hit a speed bump. I gotta get back on the good foot now.
Your Chiefs are burying my team in that league right now.
I mean, if you guys have questions, make sure you send them to us at NFL Fantasy on Twitter or in the comment section here on YouTube. We will answer them all show long, all season long. Let's go ahead and take out our notable actives and inactives for Week 10. This is our early games. A lot of guys are out. Some big surprises, too. Big Ben will not be playing, as will Alvin Kamara, Julio Jones, Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski. All of those guys are out and should be out of your lineups. Now, our late game injuries to monitor. Lots of eyes on the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, unlikely to play, as is DeAndre Hopkins. Chase Edmonds has officially been ruled out. Our eyes also looking towards Keenan Allen, who is expected to play but has been battling through a knee injury. We'll continue to monitor those injuries and get you guys updated with any updates that we know of. But the big news here this week, Odell Beckham Jr. joined the Los Angeles Rams.
Wait,
and we went from saying, oh my gosh, it's a crowded wide receiver room, what's happening? And now Bobby Trees, our guy Robert Woods, who we've been standing for, he's out for the remainder of the season. So Odell Beckham Jr. is slated to be active and play on Monday Night Football. What should fantasy managers do in this matchup?
Start him. Yeah, absolutely, you're starting him. I mean, we were sort of toying with the idea of starting him anyway, but now that Robert Woods is out and they have really are just kind of getting him up to speed quickly and getting him back or getting him in the lineup, that means you can definitely play him against the Niners secondary that's had issues pretty much all year long. Also, I know on Friday's Fantasy Live, I was like, if you're the last one in the Van Jefferson Truther meeting, turn out the lights. Well, you know what? Come on back.
Lights are back on,
I got donuts and coffee. Come on back. We're back on again, everybody. Van Jefferson's back in our lives now.
Yeah, I have them both ranked as wide receiver 3s this week. I actually have Van Jefferson higher because he knows the offense. He has the rapport with Matt Stafford, but it wouldn't surprise me if Sean McVay was like, you see our new toy Odell Beckham, I'm just going to give him like 10 targets this week. So I think you start them both, Van Jefferson and Odell.
Okay, Odell Beckham Jr. fantasy managers feeling a little bit happier about this scenario than the one he had back in Cleveland. The other big news in the headline over the weekend is that Ben Roethlisberger tested positive for COVID-19, so he is going to be out. Mason Rudolph will get the start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So does that impact the offense? Other than Najee Harris, which we know is an automatic must start, what are we doing with the Steelers pass catchers?
I don't know. I feel like it's the same as it was before, right? Obviously you're starting Najee, as you mentioned. You're starting Deontay Johnson. And, depending on your situation, you may or may not be starting Pat Freiermuth. It kind of is what it is. Although, I don't know. Do we feel any different about James Washington? It's the whole, like, Mason Rudolph and James Washington, they were college teammates.
No.
Okay.
Not for me, at least.
Okay.
No, that was a hard no.
Yeah, it's not Najee, Deontay, and maybe Freiermuth, like Marcus said. And under no circumstances, even in 2-quarterback leagues, should you consider using Mason Rudolph.
No.
No.
Not
but
even a little bit.
The matchup against the Lions, I could see some crazy people being like, you know what?
40 carries for Najee Harris.
I'm just going to yell it. All right, so Najee Harris will probably be our top scorer. But the big news there, make sure to have Big Ben out of your lineup. All eyes are on the Arizona Cardinals because it looks like it may be a situation kind of similar to last week where both Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins likely to not play today. So we still feel good about Christian Kirk and Zach Ertz and all those other guys with Colt McCoy because he was looking like vintage Colt McCoy from college, right?
Yeah, like he's back in Austin again or something, man. Like, yeah, no, we're fine. We're fine with all the other pass catchers. We saw what they did last week against the 49ers. So if you got Christian Kirk, I think you can start him. A.J. Green is back. I think you can start him. I'm big on Eno Benjamin this week, too. It's kind of I think we may talk about him later. I don't know if I'm spoiling something. Spoiler alert in case I am. But Eno Benjamin has some sleeper potential for me, too, this week.
Completely agree. And James Conner, he's a must-start running back this week, in my opinion. I mean, with what he did last week, given the targets and all those carries, I think you start him with no questions asked this week.
Wasn't on my bingo card for week 9 that James Conner would be the #1 fantasy football player, over 40 fantasy points. But obviously, we saw what happened last week. This Arizona Cardinals team, they still got the win. They still looked good. So don't worry about any of those other guys. It's time now for the waiver wire presented by KFC. These are some notable free agents that are available in over 50% of NFL.com leagues. So if you need someone, look to these guys. A quarterback, Matt Ryan. A running back, Mark Ingram, especially with the news that Alvin Kamara is out. Alexander Madison, Jordan Howard. D'Ernest Johnson, the only healthy running back for the Cleveland Browns. Donovan Peoples-Jones, if you need a pass catcher. Van Jefferson, because the lights are back on.
Lights are back on.
Lights are back on for him.
Meeting's on.
Elijah Moore, Pat Freiermuth at tight end, Dan Arnold as well. So we all need heroes. We love heroes. I just named a few on the board. You going off menu, on menu for a guy that could help out some fantasy managers this week.
I'm going, I guess, sort of off menu. I don't know if he was on the Jordan Howard is the guy. And I've been saying for a couple of weeks, we've all been saying for a couple of weeks, go get Jordan Howard. He's still widely available. At least, you know, I know that as of Friday, he was still available in about 73% of NFL.com leagues. That's insane. I mean, he is getting the majority of the work there in Philadelphia. Even when Miles Sanders comes back, there's talk that his role could be permanent there. They certainly like him as the hammer down near the goal line. I don't even care about the matchup. It is the opportunity, it is the volume, and it's the knowledge that when they get close, he's going to get the football. So go get Jordan Howard.
Go do it. Listen to Marcus. What about you? A hero?
It's a little bit deeper. I wouldn't add him over the names on menu, but Deontay Foreman, AP is 36 years old. He looked his age last week, in my opinion. So Foreman looked the part. Like, he kind of looks a little bit like Derrick Henry there running at. So I just think in case they start getting away from Adrian Peterson a little bit more, Foreman is a nice bench stash right now.
The only red flag there is that the Saints defense, very, very tough against the run. But hey, crazier things have happened. We all need heroes.
I have to start him in a league this week, so I'm...
You know, things happen. Things happen this late in the season. Mine is Devin Singletary. Now, Zach Mock, he's cleared concussion protocol. He is expected to play today, but the matchup is just too good for me to not also get Devin Singletary in there. He's had 10-plus touches in 6 of the last 8 games this season, and the Jets, well, they're jetting, especially against the run. They've given up the most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. So Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, basically all your running backs, start them against the New York Jets. I know you like that one, too.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
a Bills fan.
I just wish Moss, you know, would have took a week off so we could just get full Singletary.
Right? Come on. Maybe later on in the season. It's time now for 15 for 15, presented by Geico. Marcus, you got some must-start quarterbacks, and I want to know who they are.
I do. We got Carson Wentz, who is going to be a daddy again anytime now. Not sure when, but advanced congratulations to Carson Wentz and his wife on the expected birth of their second child. You got Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr against your Kansas City Chiefs in what I think could be a very high-scoring game between those two teams. Matt Ryan, who, you know, I know he alternates between Matty Ice and Meh Ryan, but I think he can be Ice.
Meh Ryan.
Meh Ryan, right, in this one. And Teddy Bridgewater, who's got a really good matchup against the Eagles. But the guy I really want to talk about is Ryan Tannehill, who I think the Titans are going to have to lean on him more. And, you know, I know when Derrick Henry first went down, Mike Vrabel said he didn't expect too many changes in the offense. I'm just not buying that because you can't find somebody who's going to replace what Derrick Henry did. And Florio talked about Adrian Peterson and D'Onta Foreman. Those guys just don't add up to that, and especially against the Saints defense, as you mentioned, Kimmy. The best defense in the NFL against the run. This is going to have to be a game where Tannehill really takes over. Definitely a disappointment that they're not going to have Julio Jones for the foreseeable future. There's still A.J. Brown. There's still guys to get the football to. And Ryan Tannehill can get out of the pocket and run, too, himself if he needs to, and I think that's going to happen this week.
Flora, let's stick with the AFC, but instead look at the AFC West. Derek Carr is taking on my Kansas City Chiefs, and you like him as a start this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, Kimmy, your Chiefs defense has been one that you could pick on with quarterbacks. They allow the second most fantasy points, but Derek Carr's been putting up numbers all year. Doesn't matter the situation. He's just been playing well. And last year, he faced this defense twice. He scored over 21 fantasy points in each game. So I like Carr a lot. I have him as a QB1 this week.
These rival games, I feel like, are always incredibly competitive, especially the Raiders and the Chiefs. So both Derek Carr and Patrick Mahomes should have good games. But Florio, I want to go back around to you. Talk me through some must-start running backs for Week 10.
Yeah, so you mentioned Devin Singletary. He is on this list. I also have James Conner. I said earlier he's a must-start. Michael Carter and all those dump-offs from Mike White. I like him a lot. Leonard Fournette, just because Leonard Fournette keeps getting it done. And then J.D. McKissick. But let's focus on Leonard Fournette. I mean, this is a guy that coming into the year, we were like, is it going to be him or Ronald Jones, or is Gio Bernard going to steal the passes? It's just been all Fournette as of late. They turn to Ronald Jones when they have like a big lead or something like that. So maybe we see Jones if it's starting to be a blowout. But with the Bucs also shorthanded with no AB or Gronk, I expect a lot of Fournette today. I think we could get a couple of dump-offs to him. And we know when they get near pay dirt, he is the running back that they trust. So I have him as a top 15 must-start running back this week.
Lombardi Lennon, baby. Marcus, who's their RV? You feel pretty darn confident this.
Well, I'm going to go, I don't know if you guys are old enough to have played Super Tecmo Bowl, but, you know, they used to, instead of just having the name, they would sometimes be like, you know, QB Eagle. So I'm going RB Cardinals is what I'm doing for this one.
Love it.
You know, we're just, whoever is in the backfield for the Cardinals probably deserves to be in your lineup. Certainly James Conner. We talked about how great he was last week. You can see it here against the 49ers. And with Chase Edmonds out, we know that James Conner is going to get probably an elevation in his workload there. But the Cardinals have had about a 60-40 split with their running backs this year. They are surprisingly one of the higher running teams in the NFL. I think the 4th highest run play percentage. So that means a lot of opportunity there. And so even if you don't have James Conner, Eno Benjamin is a nice sleeper play this week against a defense that has really struggled against the run in the last month.
I know we started so hot this season, being like, the Panthers defense.
Yeah, they're so good. Like, oh, the Panthers. Yeah, no, it all fell apart.
Yeah, but James Conner and hashtag team running back for the Cardinals.
Hashtag Cardinals RB. There it is.
All right, Marcus, talk me through some wide receiver options.
Okay, let's see. We got Mike Evans, who Florio mentioned. No Antonio Brown. Gronk's out. Chris Godwin is questionable right now, so he's going to get some love. Keenan Allen, who is expected to play, love the matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. I talked about Carson Wentz earlier, so why not have his #1 target, Michael Pittman, in there? Like Emmanuel Sanders, even though I think Cole Beasley could get a little bit of work there as well. And then Jamal Agnew, who is the guy I really kind of want to focus on because he's sort of the name that, you know, one of these things is not like the others, and that's Jamal Agnew because people aren't really talking about him. And I know that the last couple of weeks when I bring him up, I have to also mention my love for Laviska Shenault and how I've had to pour a little bit out for him because it hasn't worked out the way I wanted to. Right now, over the last month, Jamal Agnew is tied for the team lead in targets with, of all people, Dan Arnold, which gives Marvin Jones the sads as well. But this is a situation I expect the Jags to be playing from behind against Indianapolis. Agnew's working well out of the slot. I think there are a lot of targets coming his way.
So sad for Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault.
Yep.
Pouring them out. We're pouring them out for you. But
for
Florio, a name I know you liked as well was Jerry Jeudy this week.
Yeah, he since he's come back, the first game back was more about just seeing him out there and healthy. Last week, he started to get the volume. He actually leads the Broncos in targets since he came back off the IR. I think last week he showed us his safe floor. We've yet to see the real breakout. And I think we could see, you know, a lot of Slay on Courtland Sutton potentially this week. I think Jerry Jeudy, top 20 must-start wide receiver. He's shown us that he's got a safe floor. The ceiling hasn't been shown yet, but I think it's coming.
I love it. Florio, you know my favorite position in football. It's a tight end spot. Seeing as I went to tight end you. Give me some must-start tight ends for Week 10.
The unicorn, I know he hasn't been quite the unicorn the last couple of weeks, but still a must-start option against the Cowboys. Dalton Schultz, all he does is lead the team in targets when Dak Prescott plays. Your boy Hawkinson from tight end U.
Love it.
Dallas Goedert because it's a two-man show there in the passing game in Philly. And then Dan Arnold against the Colts. But let's focus on Dan Arnold. You heard Marcus say it's him and Agnew leading the way in targets. Dan Arnold, since the Jaguars traded for him, leads this team in targets. He is just getting enough work each game. He's gotten at least 5 targets in each of the last 4 weeks. So he's just giving you double-digit points each week, which is basically, if you're streaming a tight end, that's all you want is double-digit fantasy points. So 3 of the last 4 he's giving you that, and this is another game where I think the Jaguars are going to have to throw against a pretty weak Chiefs Colts secondary.
Talk about a safe floor with Dan Arnold the last few weeks. It's time for us to take a quick break, but coming up on NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico, we're going to give you our definitely must starts. But before we do that, look at Ryan Tannehill. He was a must start quarterback for us today. I'm so in on the Titans, especially seeing what they did against the Rams. But let's see if they can do it again today. Another one, Najee Harris, who we said will have what? 40-plus touches?
Infinite touches.
All of the touches.
Sure.
We'll be right back. Stick with us. Matt Ryan there in Dallas looking to get the start against the Cowboys. Also
Josh Rosen sighting.
Also looking to get maybe another upset win after his Falcons beat the Saints last week. Speaking of the Saints, the RB1 for the Saints today, it is Mark Ingram versus the Tennessee Titans. Alvin Kamara is out with an injury, so it looks like the guy reunited with his team could be the RB1. And now I don't feel dumb for saying everyone go pick him up. He's a sleeper.
It's going to be really fun for him to get all the carries and then Taysom Hill take the goal line touches. That's going to be.
Do not let that happen. Sean Payton, please do not let that happen.
So great.
Welcome back into NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Again, I'm Kimmy Checks. He's Marcus Grant. He over there is Michael F. Florio. Please continue to send us your questions on Twitter at NFL Fantasy or ask them in the comment section on YouTube right now. Our very own researcher, Matt Okada, extraordinaire, he's answering all of them. But it's time to get you guys in the hot seat live on the show. Florio, I'm going to start with you. We got some fan tweets and some fan questions. Zach Moss, if healthy, or Cortland Sutton at the flex?
I love Singletary this week. I would also play Zach Moss. That's how many fantasy points the Jets give up to running backs. And Cortland Sutton's averaging 4 fantasy points per game when Jerry Jeudy plays, and Judy's playing today. So I'm actually going to go with Moss there.
And that wasn't even a homer pick. That was factual. He had the stats to back it up. Marcus, your turn for the hot seat. Cordero Patterson or James Conner?
I want to know who else you have that you can't play both of those guys.
Right?
Really?
I would probably say James Conner in this one just because I have a little less faith in the Panthers' run defense than I do the Cowboys right now.
Okay, I agree with that one. Let's get yet another one. Do I play Mike Williams or D'Ernest Johnson in my flex spot? Again, who is your squad? I think these are good problems to have. But Florio, what do you think?
I like both of these guys this week. Mike Williams is my boy, but I'm going to go with D'Ernest Johnson there just because I think he's a safe bet to get like 15 to 20 touches today, where Mike Williams, you can't say that.
No BMW. Even though we think maybe we like Dearness Johnson, he's the only healthy running back, so all the volume should go his way. One last question for you, Marcus.
Okay.
Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, or Matt Ryan? Okay, Tannehill, Wentz, Ryan.
Ooh, you know what? I think I may lean toward Carson Wentz in this one. It's really close between the three of them. I just I do think the Colts are going to be able to move the ball on the Jaguars, and Carson Wentz has been really steady for the last. Actually, most of the season at this point.
Right, it's like, don't let the interceptions fool you. He's actually been having a safe floor of fantasy.
And really, he had one game with like 3 interceptions. Other than that, he's actually done it looks like, here's the people who love the Law, Sausage, and Carson Wentz fantasy points should watch neither being made. But other than that, like, it's fine. The end result's fine.
All right, let's go ahead and turn to a segment we are calling our fantasy DMs. It's not weird messages. Instead, it's definitely must start. Some guys we feel confident getting into our lineups this week. So, Marcus, give me a DM.
I've been on J.D. McKissic all week, and I think you stay there, too, because some of it has to do with the matchup against the Buccaneers. I know that Bucs' run defense is really tough, but they give up a lot of receptions to running backs. And on top of it, I see this being a situation where, with the Washington defense being bad, Tampa goes out and scores a lot of points. I think Tom Brady in that offense has a huge day. And so in the second half, I think you're going to see Washington throwing the football a lot to stay in it. J.D. McKissic is the guy who gets to work in those situations, so I think he needs to be in your lineup now.
Yeah, I love McKissic this week as well. And literally minutes after I just said to go with another option over BMW, I'm saying Big Mike Williams is a definite must-start this week, unless you have to decide between him and Dearness Johnson. Look, I know it hasn't been great the last couple of weeks for Mike Williams, but he is still a deep target on the Chargers. We saw last week all of his fantasy points basically came on one long catch. The Vikings are in the top 10 in most catches, yards, and touchdowns allowed of over 20-plus air yards. So I think in what could be a high-scoring game, we're going to get a couple of deep shots to Mike Williams. So I still really like him, and I'm starting him this week.
And I agree with that one because Keenan Allen is expected to play, but say he gets banged up and he has to be on the sideline a little bit more. All that volume, all that look will be going Mike Williams' way. So it is a BMW, just not if you have Dearness Johnson as well. Mine is DJ Moore, and I know I sound crazy, but I'm going to just keep honking the horn on DJ Moore, especially because Cam Newton is going to be the starting quarterback for the Panthers. Maybe not this week. It's still going to be P.J. Walker, but in future weeks. Now, I know the numbers have not been there, right? You see it right here, though. 29% target share this season. That's the 5th most in the NFL. He also is the guy that P.J. Walker is looking towards. He's tied for the most targets from him this season. So I know it's not what we wanted. It's not the wide receiver 1 numbers, but honestly, I don't think a lot of people may have other options. I know in a league I was going to start Julio Jones, and I got the news that he was placed on IR, so I had to go with DJ Moore, and I feel confident doing it, so you should too. Just maybe he'll rebound a little bit more. We all know. Oh, is it the purge? We all know in fantasy football, we make some mistakes, right? We draft these guys, they have high expectations, and then we have to hit the panic button when those things don't actually pan out. So 10 weeks in, it's full panic mode if some guys have not put up some numbers. So who are you hitting the panic button on, Florio?
Unfortunately, I'm hitting the panic button on Antonio Gibson. He is a player that we thought could be an RB1. Most people were drafting him as such this year, and he has been anything but. He's been putting up routinely single digits as of late, and today he gets the Bucs, who are giving up the 2nd fewest rushing yards per game to running backs. We know how tough the Bucs are against the run. I actually have J.D. McKissic ranked ahead of Antonio Gibson because Gibson's just not being used in the passing game like we thought he would be. I think this is a week to get away from Gibson, and man, going forward, I'm hitting that panic button hard on him.
Yeah, I talked about J.D. McKissic just a bit ago, so I'm totally on board with that too. I am panicking on Marvin Jones, and yeah.
Oh, yes. Scream.
Yes, we are screaming about Marvin Jones. That's what it is right now. And this is such a change from early in the year when they were going to him and they were using him as a downfield option. That's gone away. The thing about it, I think what's most distressing to me is that he's still getting a decent target share. It's weirdly still behind Dan Arnold and Jamal Agnew. I can't really figure that out. But even when they're throwing in the ball, he is not getting downfield. I keep saying this. The last thing you want when you're a fantasy manager is to see your wide receiver catch the ball and the line of scrimmage line is still on the screen. And that's kind of what his life has been. It's a lot of eyewash. There's a whole lot of activity and no real production, and that's making me very nervous right now.
That's why you're panicking. That's why you're screaming. like the girl earlier. My panic has been panic for a few weeks now, but especially because he's now been placed on IR. Julio Jones will not be suiting up and playing anytime soon. The soonest that he can come back will be in Week 13 after the bye for the Titans. And this is a tough situation for all fantasy managers because we heard the news. We were so excited. He's joining this offense. Ryan Tannehill is going to have another weapon. He can be alongside A.J. Brown in this red-hot offense and kind of take a load off of Derrick Henry, but he's just not been healthy enough to do so. The big stinger with all of this is that we drafted him pretty high. So to lose a guy who's only averaging about 9 fantasy points this season, who we know has the talent, it's a blow to our ego. It's a blow to our fantasy squad.
I thought this was such a good spot for him this week.
I know. But first things first, we want to make sure that he gets healthy and back on the field. That takes precedent over our fantasy lineups. But you know, just a little bit panicked, a little bit sad. It's time for us to take a quick break. But before we do so, Cordero Patterson, literally a fantasy MVP this season. Literally a fantasy MVP this season, taking on the Dallas Cowboys. On the other side of this ball, it's Michael Florio's favorite wide receiver in the league, CeeDee Lamb, a guy who he's been thumping on for years now. That interesting matchup coming up next. But stay tuned in the show, because we got some guys you should not sleep on. Sunday Sleepers is coming up next. There is one Baker Mayfield, the greatest actor to ever play in the NFL. I just love his commercials. Wondering if he's a little relieved OBJ is gone, and they're like, you know what? We're just going to keep winning games, and I'm going to throw even better because you roasted me online.
I'm sorry. You said greatest act, like when Brett Favre and his wooden performance and There's Something About Mary still exists?
Oh, come on. Good point. There's Jared Goff taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers today. I just want them to win, man. I just want the Lions.
If this is a spot, maybe they can.
I don't know.
Yeah, the Steelers are notorious for playing down to their opponents, and they don't have Big Ben this week.
Mason Rudolph.
True. Mason Rudolph.
Kind of gross.
Crazier things have happened in the NFL. Welcome back into NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. If you're just joining us, Kimmy Chucks, Marcus Grant, Michael Florio, please continue to send us all of your lineup questions at NFL Fantasy or live in the comment section here on YouTube. Let's go ahead and get you guys caught up on the latest injury news as we get ready for Week 10, our notable actives and inactives for our early games. Big Ben is out. Alvin Kamara is out. Julio Jones, Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski. Make sure all of those guys are out of your lineups. Good news for Chris Godwin and James Robinson fantasy managers. However, looking at our later afternoon games, all eyes are kind of on the Arizona Cardinals here. Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, both those guys unlikely to play. Chase Edmonds has officially been ruled out. Keenan Allen, some good news there. He's been dealing with a knee injury, but he is suited up and seems like he is expected to play today for the Chargers. Now, it's time for some burning questions. I got them. The internet's got them. We all got burning questions in fantasy football. And the first one is for you, Marcus. Now, Cordero Patterson is only one of 3 players in the NFL with 14-plus fantasy points in 7 straight games, along with only Aaron Rodgers and Najee Harris. So does he make it 8 straight against the Cowboys today for my literally fantasy MVP this season?
Yep. Yeah, it's happening this week. I mean, look, the offense really has been Cordero Patterson. You know, occasionally we've seen Kyle Pitts step in, but it has been the Cordero Patterson show this year, whether it's as a runner, whether it's as a receiver. I mean, look, they have Calvin Ridley out of the lineup, and then last week, what happens? Patterson goes out and has 100 receiving yards. Like, they're finding ways to get him the football. So I feel pretty confident that at least 14 points is incoming again. I expect maybe even a little more than that this week.
How many points do you think you would expect for him today?
Let's put the floor at 15. Let's just start at 15. And
one number above.
Yeah, we'll go above the
average.
Like that.
Right. But you agree. It's 8 straight.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the guy gets like 5 catches for 50 yards basically every game. So that right there is 10 fantasy points. So he doesn't need to do a whole lot more than that to top 14. I think he does it easily.
Florio, let's stick with you here. Chris Godwin has scored at least 19 fantasy points in all 3 games without Antonio Brown this season. So does he do it today, again, against the Washington FT?
I think he does. I know he is a little banged up coming into the day, but Washington gives up 300 passing yards on average and 2.5 touchdowns. That would be a bad game for Tom Brady, who's averaging 330 and 3 touchdowns each week. So yeah, plenty to go around. I think Evans and Godwin each have a big day today.
I mean, I say he does it simply because I need it in one of my lineups.
Manifest
to have
it.
a big day. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to speak it into existence right now. But yeah, the Washington defense, I don't know if you've heard, it's bad.
Yeah,
so,
I have heard that.
I do think as long as he's
complete opposite from last year.
Yeah. So I think he does do it today, though.
Okay, so good news if you have any of those guys on your fantasy squad. It's time now for Fantasy Insurance, presented by Geico. And these are the moves that can either make or break your fantasy squad. I'm talking about some sleepers, some names we should not be sleeping on, some guys that people maybe aren't starting, but they should based on the matchup. So give me a sleeper.
We're going to go Brandon Ayuk because he's back in our lives. I'm wearing an old school 49ers shirt. And so, like, Brandon Ayuk, he's back. I don't know if it is because he's out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. I don't know if it's that the 49ers have just become desperate offensively and they're trying to figure out ways to get this thing kickstarted. Whatever the reason, I don't care. What I care about is Brandon Ayuk is getting some more work in this offense, and that's what we like to see. This is the guy, we're starting to see the guy that we spent, a fairly high draft pick on. We didn't see him for most of the year, and even against a good Rams defense, a bad matchup, I should say, I think the Niners are going to have to throw the football, and I think you're going to see Ayuk get involved, especially because, maybe we see Jalen Ramsey on Deebo Samuel or something like that, so maybe that helps out Ayuk a little bit this week.
I love that you wear his T-shirt, even to back up your claim that
yeah, exactly. I did just for that whole 30-second part.
Just for that. Florio, give me a guy that you're not sleeping on any longer.
Ty Johnson, and I think he is a little bit of a deeper option. I'm not saying, start him over the guys you start each week, but if you're going a little bit deeper at running back, Ty Johnson is a name I like. Look, Mike White throws 38% of his passes so far to running backs, and them facing a tough Bills secondary, I think the receivers aren't going to be getting open, so I think we're going to see a lot of dump offs to the running backs. That means some catches for Johnson as well. Plus, they like to use him near the goal line at times as well, so he could even score a touchdown, find the end zone today. I think if you're going a little bit deeper at running back, Johnson is a name you should consider. I
was asking you guys about some sleepers right before the show, and Ty Johnson was available on a waiver wire. I just picked him up and plugged him into a lineup, so I like that, regardless of the matchup. A tough one against your Buffalo Bills. Now, my sleeper, and I said what I said on this one, it's Mark Ingram. And I said he was a sleeper when he first joined the Saints again, and everyone added me and was like, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about in fantasy. I said he's a sleeper because it can't all be Alvin Kamara, especially if Alvin Kamara is not on the field. And that's the case today for the Saints taking on the Titans. Now Mark Ingram, he's familiar with this offense because he used to be a part of the team, and Sean Payton went and traded for him because he knew that he needed help. Now, he's had 22 touches in the 2 games with the Saints this season. Let me stick with the number 22. You want to know why that's important, guys?
Well, he used to wear 22.
Well, he used to wear 22, but it's also important because Alvin Kamara is seeing about 22 touches a game when he is healthy. That means over 22 touches are up for grabs, and it's looking like it can all go Mark Ingram's way. The only thing that could destroy that is the Taysom Hill goal line carry.
They were throwing the ball to Mark Ingram a lot more, though, than anticipated. So
Good. He can be involved in the run game and the passing game as well. That's why he's my sleeper. It's time for us to take a quick break. But first, there's a look at Ezekiel Elliott. I just want to know his workout plan. Speaking of workout plans, we got our fantasy flexes coming up next. He's just so cool. I just want to be friends with Zeke.
what does it say across his stomach?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm strong. I have no idea. Here's a strong rookie, though. It's Mac Jones in AFC battle taking on the Cleveland Browns. We'll be right back. Welcome back into NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. We're sticking with the Cowboys here. Amari Cooper. I just think they have very crisp uniforms. I don't know. It's a takeaway. Jarvis Landry, is he sad because his BFF is gone?
I think he's sad.
Or is he happy for him?
I mean, I think he's happy for him and sad for himself.
Do you think there was any drama?
Not between
Not with him and Odell, no.
No. It is what it is.
Odell wrote a handwritten note and mentioned him by name in it.
That was sweet. I was like, thanks for that. Thanks for posting that on the IG. Welcome back into NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Kimmy Checks holding it down with Marcus Grant and Michael F. Florio. Continue to send all your questions in at NFL Fantasy or live in the comment section right now on YouTube. We'll answer them to make sure you are one step closer to a fantasy championship. I was talking about how strong Zeke was before our last break, so it's only necessary that I talk about some strong flex plays, guys. Some flex plays in Week 10 that are guaranteed to get some people some fantasy points. So who we flexing with? Florio?
I'm going with Hunter Renfrow here. I know the guy doesn't look like he's a very strong flex option, but he's been that's exactly what he has been this year. He has scored double-digit fantasy points in all but one game, so he brings one of the safest floors in football. Plus, the Chiefs have given up the third most touchdowns to slot receivers, which is where Hunter Renfrow does all of his damage. So in a game that I think could be high scoring, where they could have to throw a lot, I like Hunter Renfrow a good amount this week.
Well, I want to sort of piggyback off of that one, too, and I'm going to say Kenyon Drake, because One of the things that has changed with this Raiders offense, when they changed play callers to Greg Olsen, you started to see more guys get involved. Early in the season, it was pretty much the Darren Waller show. But since Greg Olsen's taken over, we're seeing more Hunter Renfrow. We're seeing more Kenyon Drake. And like we all believe, that this is going to be a back-and-forth game with both teams putting points on the board. Derek Carr spreading the ball around. Kenyon Drake is looking like the guy we thought he would be when he signed with the Raiders. That pass-catching back, that nice change of pace from Josh Jacobs, and I think we're going to see it again today.
I feel like you guys are picking on me. You're just picking at everybody against my Chiefs. It's okay, though, because I'm sticking with Van Jefferson because Marcus said the lights are back on. I was very, very worried about him when the news broke that Odell Beckham Jr. was joining the Rams. But if you need a guy for Monday Night Football, Van Jefferson is that dude. Florio even said you have him ranked a little bit higher than OBJ because he knows this offense on Monday Night Football. The thing is, he's had double-digit fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. He also is on the field and playing for 92% of the snaps. So on volume and opportunity alone, Van Jefferson should be able to get you some safe fantasy points. Those are our favorite flex starts, but it's time now for Who Scores, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. We're going to talk about some of the biggest names in fantasy and what we're expecting from them today, starting with none other than Christian McCaffrey. He was the #1 pick in many leagues. So Marcus, will we be seeing vintage Christian McCaffrey today versus the Arizona Cardinals?
I think so. Last week, we kind of got what we expected, right? The Panthers were very open about the fact that they were sort of easing him back in. They weren't going to give him the full workload. And even then, I think he still got you, 14, 15 fantasy points, something like that. So I think this week we sort of see the full complement of Christian McCaffrey. I think he goes back to being the workhorse that he had been when he was healthy previously. And so regardless of the situation, regardless of what the score is, McCaffrey is going to get his touches. He's going to get his work, and I think he's going to be just fine today.
Well, DraftKings has Christian McCaffrey right around 63.5 rush yards. So what are your specific fantasy projections for him today?
I got him at about 22 fantasy points, maybe 23 fantasy points, something like that. I think you're going to see him probably do maybe a little bit more work in the air. I could see about 75, 80 yards in the air, maybe about 50 to 60 rushing yards. Probably finds his way into the end zone. But I think overall you're going to be pretty pleased with what you get from McCaffrey today.
I mean, it's just par for the course.
That's what it is.
Christian McCaffrey.
You know?
Now, Florio, Russell Wilson is back. So dangerous. Will he be able to save the Seahawks pass catchers fantasy season this year?
A hot take, I think Russell Wilson is just a little bit better of a passer than Geno Smith. So
Ooh,
I
just
think
a little bit.
Just a little bit. So I think, yeah, it's going to mean good things.
Be careful out on that limb.
For DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And we saw that when Russ was out, they were trying to run the ball even more, even with Chris Carson out. So I think this means good things for Russ and all the pass catchers there in Seattle.
Well, he's going to have to be throwing some passes in the snow. This right now, a live look of Green Bay, Wisconsin. But let's focus on some pass catchers here. Tyler Lockett, to be specific, DraftKings has Lockett right around 67.5 receiving yards. So what's your fantasy projection for him today?
I think he'll be around 18 fantasy points. That's what he was giving you in the 4 full games with Russell Wilson this year. And Marcus, you pointed out, he loves those moon balls from Russ, and they just weren't there with Geno Smith. So I think we'll get a couple of deep shots to Tyler Lockett. I know it's snowy out in Green Bay, but I still think we could see a good amount of points scored with both of these Super Bowl winning quarterbacks returning.
Yes. Yes. Super Bowl QBs, snow game, all of the fun things of Week 10. I'm very, very excited. But that was Who Scores, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use the promo code WHOSCORES to claim your deposit bonus up to $1,000. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only, new customers only as well. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. It's time now for My Bad. We're talking about players that we pushed for, we were hot on, we said they were going to be great, and then it didn't really happen. So cue the breakup music. My bad for who, Marcus?
For everybody that I proposed go out and get Allen Robinson. My bad. I really came into the season feeling like, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade. And really, Allen Robinson to this point in his career had a whole lemon grove, and really was just prospering nonetheless. And I felt like this was the year that it was going to get. He was finally going to get the quarterback that we had all wished for him. And so while he still has that large grove of lemons, they didn't give him sugar. So now he's just handing you bitter juice. And I'm sorry for that. I did not anticipate that coming. It just has not been sweet at all. It's just been sour. And I'm sorry.
This is so dramatic.
I'm so sorry.
This is so dramatic. Florio, who were you my batting on?
I was very high on Allen Robinson coming into the year. Robbie Anderson. And if you guys listen to me, I'm very sorry for that. I was saying how Robbie Anderson was a top 20 wide receiver last year, despite the fact that he had just 3 touchdowns. I thought he was going to score more than that this year. I thought he has a connection with the new quarterback here in Carolina because they played together in New York. And unfortunately, Robbie Anderson is barely a top 100 wide receiver right now. He forgot how to catch, which is a big part of being a wide receiver in the National Football League. And it's just, he's not even worth rostering right now. So I'm very sorry for anyone who listened to me and drafted Robbie Anderson.
Allen Robinson, Robbie Anderson, some big names. Mine was a little bit of a sleeper this season, and I said, you know what, guys, 10th round ADP, it's a steal, it's a bargain. Marquez Callaway is going to get Jameis Winston. He's going to be the starting quarterback. He's going to be an MVP. He gets hurt. It's Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill now, too. He's only averaging about 9.5 fantasy points this season. That's 53rd amongst wideouts. So, you know, for the ADP, it's not bad. But the amount of hype I had for this man, I am embarrassed. I'm a fool of fools. You're okay in the flex spot, but, honey, I thought you had wide receiver 2 potential, but that ain't it. And it ain't Marquez Callaway, so I'm sorry. For all the fantasy managers, I led astray on that one. Wow, very dramatic, but let's bring it back up. It's time for us to take a quick break here on NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico.
Oh, it's Julio.
No. Just kidding. That was a stab right through my heart. But that guy right there, A.J. Brown, slated to have a huge game. Mason Rudolph also getting to start with Big Ben out. We'll be right back with our bold prediction and favorite starts coming up next. Dak Prescott. What's his full name? Dak Rain?
Rain Dakota Prescott.
Rain Dakota Prescott. I think that's a good football name. Yes, no?
Rain Prescott. Rain Prescott sounds like one of the quarterbacks who played against like John Moxon in Varsity Blues.
Yeah, accurate. Also accurate, this guy's accuracy. Love some Dak Prescott. Shout out to Stacey Dales holding it down for the NFL Network today, reporting from a very cold and a very snowy Green Bay, Wisconsin. This is going to be a fun one. It's Aaron Rodgers taking on Russell Wilson. The return of these two guys in the cold.
I love snow games when I'm at home.
Imagine having to push a foot of snow off your seat to watch the game.
It's just not going to happen.
Not so much.
I'm going to be sitting on my warm couch here in Los Angeles watching that one. It's 15 minutes to kick off, presented by Geico. Here's our notable actives and inactives from our early games. Big Ben is out. Alvin Kamara is out, along with Julio Jones, Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski. However, good news, if you have James Robinson or Chris Godwin on your fantasy squad, both those guys active and will be suiting up to play. Now, we continue to send you guys our fan questions and send them at NFL Fantasy. We got some of them, so Marcus Grant, Michael Flory, and myself, it's time to make good on our promise to answer them and get people's lineup set. You're on the hot seat first, Marcus.
Okay.
Kenyon Drake or Javonte Williams, RB2?
As much as I talked about Kenyon Drake, I'm going to go Javonte Williams here just because I think the matchup's good. I like both the Broncos running backs in this game today.
Okay, yeah, and easiest remaining schedule, rest of season. That's a little extra note for you. Florio, huge dilemma, huge PPR flex spot. Adam Thielen, Melvin Gordon, Justin Jefferson, or I'm assuming Josh Jacobs?
One of those names is not like the other, and it's Justin Jefferson. Like, Justin Jefferson is still an elite option. The others are all solid options, but Justin Jefferson, you start him no matter what each week.
Yeah, duh. It's kind of an obvious. Marcus, Brandon Ayuk or Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver 3, standard league.
Even though I hyped up Brandon Ayuk, I think the matchup's better for Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, we're expecting the Bills to just dump truck points on the Jets, so Emmanuel Sanders today.
Producer Hytham asked me this exact question this morning.
Oh,
Really?
Are we sure
Maybe
this isn't him?
All right, from a burner account. Florio, last question for you. Kyle Pitts, the unicorn, or George Kittle, the people's tight end?
As much as I love Kyle Pitts and this matchup, I think it's George Kittle. I mean, he scored 20 fantasy points last week. He looks like the Kittle that we were drafting in the top 3 rounds, so it's George Kittle there for me.
Yeah. Duh. Both those guys very good, though. I love your squad. It's time to get to Sunday Funday. Here we go. Let's predict who today's top scorer will be. Marcus.
I'm going to go with Thomas Edward Patrick Brady, or Patrick Edward Brady. I don't know. Either way, the guy that wears number 12 down there in Tampa Bay. We talked about how good this offense has been all year long. We talked about how bad the Washington defense has been all year long. Those two things combined means that Tom Brady's going to be your top scorer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty safe.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be Tom Brady, though, who's it going to be, Florio?
I have Brady ranked ahead of this guy, but I think it's Aaron Rodgers because there's nothing more scary than an angry Aaron Rodgers, even if it's self-inflicted, which, you know, this is a good matchup against Seattle. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come out wanting to prove something, wanting to shut up some haters, so I could see him having a really big fantasy day.
Well, since you guys are going to go with quarterbacks, I might as well just stick on this quarterback train. Homer pick. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes at the Raiders. I would love for him to be a top scorer this season. He's been down the last few weeks. Still the quarterback number 6 in fantasy football, but historically he's performed very well against the Raiders, averaging just shy of 26 fantasy points against them in all the matchups he's played. So I feel good. Patrick Mahomes, high-scoring matchup. Top scorer. But give me a must-start quarterback, a guy that we did not mention earlier.
Matthew Stafford. And some of it's a bounce back from last week. He had an awful game against the Titans in that game that they lost. Some of it is, hey, he's got a brand new weapon to show off now with Odell Beckham Jr. Plus the 49ers secondary has had so many issues this year. A lot of injuries, a lot of underperformance. This feels like a chance for Matthew Stafford in prime time on Monday night to kind of show off a little bit.
Yeah, I love the Stafford call. I'm going with a guy that we spoke up a lot today, but Carson Wentz. Like, he's just been playing really good ball. He's got over 17 fantasy points in all but one game, multiple passing touchdowns in 6 straight games. So the floor is very safe. I don't think they're going to take the Jags for granted after what happened against Buffalo last week. So my only concern here is the birth of his kid. You know, if they're blowing out the Jaguars, is he going to then pull himself out of the game? But besides that, I think he gives us plenty of fantasy points.
Carson Wentz, please go to the birth of your child. I'm begging you, please. Those are some good names, but mine's a little bit deeper, and I like the play of Teddy Bridgewater, especially against the Eagles. He's been playing exceptionally well this season and has a really safe fantasy floor. I know that you hyped up Jerry Jeudy earlier. We always feel good about Noah Fant. Like, his pass catchers are getting involved, and that's because he's making those connections. He's had 2+ total touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 games, plus a very favorable matchup against Philly. So Teddy Bridgewater, you need a deeper guy. He is is my pick. Let's go ahead. A must-start running back.
I'm going to go with Teddy Bridgewater's teammate. I like the Bridgewater pick, by the way, but I'm going to go with his teammate, Melvin Gordon. And somebody had asked me about Javonte Williams earlier, how much I like him. But like I said earlier, either of the Broncos running backs I think are good plays. The Eagles' run defense has been pretty awful. Melvin Gordon is very quietly having a nice season there in Denver, as much as we love Javonte Williams. So get Gordon in your lineup.
Yeah, and he's getting the goal line work, a lot of it, too. I'm going with Michael Carter here. I said that Ty Johnson was a sleeper.
You love the Jets' run game today.
Because Mike White, all he does is dump off to the running backs, and I don't think that's going to change. The Bills are the best team at covering wide receivers this year, so if those guys are struggling to get open and the Jets need to put up points, I think they're going to get a lot of dump offs to the running backs. So Michael Carter, I put it on Twitter, I said he's at RB1 for me, and everyone's like, so the opposite's going to happen. I really hope not. I have a lot invested in Michael Carter today.
Michael Carter, please do not break Florio's heart. If you were going to talk up Melvin Gordon, and I felt good about Teddy Bridgewater, Javonte Williams is a pick for me as well against this Eagles team. Now, he, according to Pro Football Focus, is the second most elusive running back this season. He's had 10-plus touches in each of the 9 games, only one of 4 players in the league to do so. Both those guys are an easy start today in Philly. A wide receiver, a must-start, who we love. His name is?
Scary Terry.
Terry
McLaurin. Full disclosure, I had Julio Jones in this spot like earlier in the week, and then he goes on IR, so I had to make a pivot. And so I'm going with Terry McLaurin here, partially because look, they're back, right? The Washington team is back off a bye, so get McLaurin back in your lineup. The Buccaneers secondary has been its weakness all year long. I think the Washington team will be playing from behind, so that means throwing the football. And generally, when they throw it, there's only 2 places they throw it. Usually, it's Terry McLaurin, it's J.D. McKissick. I like both of those guys today.
Yeah, I'm needing Scary Terry in a lot of fantasy spots. I spoke him up earlier, but Jerry Jeudy is my guy. He is the top target since he's returned off the IR. I said earlier, the volume that he got last week is key. I know he didn't give us a huge fantasy total with it, but he showed us that he has a safe floor. He's showing us that the volume is consistently going to go his way, and I do not think we've even seen remotely close to his ceiling yet. So I'm pretty excited for Jerry Jeudy. He's a top 20 wide receiver for me this week.
We're all in on the Broncos in week 10, but I like it. I'm going to take my eyes over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers facing the Washington FT and Mike Evans to be specific. Now, Antonio Brown, we know he's out. Chris Godwin, he's expected to suit up and play today. But Mike Evans, I think, is going to be the guy to get the work. Now, the Washington FT, they're not so great against the passing game. They've actually allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to wideouts this season. I can see situations where Chris Godwin, since he's been banged up, he needs to go on the sideline, and Mike Evans gets all that work. So feel good of starting him today. Tight ends, you know I love them. You got to give me some more must-starts.
So we're going to close the circuit loop here, right? We've talked about a lot of the Iowa tight ends. Right? We talked about George Kittle. We talked about T.J. Hawkinson. We've talked about a lot of the Broncos. So let's just close that Venn diagram and let's talk Noah Fant.
Yes.
Against Iowa tight ends and Denver Broncos all in one. The Eagles, they're awful against tight ends. In fact, I believe the stat was the gap between them and the 2nd worst team against tight ends is as big as the gap between the 2nd and 8th worst teams against tight ends. In other words, it's bad. If we like Teddy Bridgewater, we should very much like Noah Fant today.
Yeah, I like Fant. I also like Dalton Schultz, and I know people are worried about Michael Gallup being back. Is he going to continue to be utilized? Well, that's all he's been really since week 2. He's consistently up there each week. It's like, is it him or CeeDee Lamb, him or Amari Cooper? The consistent thing is Dalton Schultz's usage remains intact. So I think even with Gallup back this week, he is a top 12 tight end that you should be looking to start this week.
Love it. I feel awkward about that since I just dropped him in a league. But I did it because I had this guy. His name is Dan Arnold. We were very depressed. The Darnold to Arnold connection was lost when he went to the Jacksonville Jags. But since he's joined that team, he's actually tied for the most targeted player on that team. Florio was the one who told me that. He's been great. He's had at least 10 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. And the Colts, they're not great against tight end spots this season. They're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to the position. So all of those reasons combined, I feel good getting Dan Arnold in my lineup. All right, that gets us to our fantasy locks of the week. What is a lock for you, Marcus? Week 10, lock, gotta happen.
Well, when we actually put the show together a couple days ago, I said my fantasy lock of the week was that Najee Harris was going to score at least 20 fantasy points. That was before Big Ben, went on the COVID list and Mason Rudolph was going to start. Like, now I might have to up that to like 30 fantasy points. I'm not sure because he's going to get all the work. They're going to give Najee Harris the ball like, 11 times, give or take. So against the bad Lions defense, it's going to be all Najee Harris this week.
He might have that by halftime
Seriously.
right now. So
I would love that.
mine is a low-hanging fruit, to borrow a line from you. It just tastes just as good, but Jonathan Taylor is going to be the RB1 this week. Look, over the last 6 weeks or so, an average game for Taylor is 150 yards and a touchdown. He's getting utilized more in the passing game. And last season against this Jaguars team in 2 games, he averaged over 26 fantasy points per game. He is going to go off. I think the RB1 this week and moving forward.
I love that. I need that too. Please, Najee, JTT, do all of those things. You guys are getting some running back some loves. I got to give it over to the pass catchers, none other than A.J. Brown. I think he has at least 18 fantasy points taking on the New Orleans Saints. We understand there's no Julio Jones. Ryan Tannehill is going to have to rely on him and the passing game because guess what? Saints, they're very good against the run, so that means all the opportunities are going to have to run through A.J. Brown, and he is a safe floor, a safe guy for me this season. So thank you, A.J. Brown, for being who you are. Thank you guys for tuning in with us. This is NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Week 10 kicks off in less than 30 seconds. We have all types of guys taking the field. Here is the Tennessee Titans suiting up against those New Orleans Saints. The New England Patriots taking on the Cleveland Browns today in New England. Doesn't look that cold. I kind of like that for New England.
I mean, it's good for them.
Yeah, the Cowboys. Hey, the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, seeing if they can bounce back and get that win. We'll be back next week. Good luck, everybody.